Well, hello everybody and welcome to another Lean-In session. I'm Michael Linke and once again, I'm your host for today. Thanks very much for joining me. Today's Lean-In session continues the theme of this week around architects' commitment to social good. The challenges facing today's society are inspiring more businesses to seek benefits for the greater good. And as we know, businesses are redefining success by broadening their goals from pure profit to more holistic results, especially in the realm of environmental concerns. Architects, as we know, have always designed for a better future, but now more than ever, architects are being asked to consider not only the social, but also the environmental impacts of their operations beyond the work that they produce. And so to discuss this challenge today, we're really thrilled to have Robert Goodliffe from Clarke Hopkins Clarke join us today. So he's going to be providing insight into certification as a B Corporation. And then joining him will be Andrew Stefanou, the Chief Executive Officer of Built Environment Channel, or BEC, one of our major partners. And Andrew's going to describe their efforts at BEC to support the architecture and the built environment professions. A little bit about our two esteemed speakers today. Robert Goodliffe has been a cornerstone of Clarke Hopkins Clarke quiet evolution into one of the most diverse and people-focused architecture firms in Australia. He's been very much guided by their mission of creating vibrant communities, and so Robert has made significant contributions across the education and the aged care sectors, the residential and the community infrastructure sectors as well. And Robert's responsible for strategically managing the growth and the operations of the business at CHC. Under Robert's leadership, Clarke Hopkins Clarke has been certified as a B Corporation, very much formalising their commitment and also his leadership within that very ethical business space. So we're thrilled to have Robert with us today. And joining him, as I said, Andrew Stefanou, the CEO of BEC, or Built Environment Channel. They're Australia's pioneer streaming service for architects with 30 years of media experience, a real passion for architecture. Andrew conceived an innovative information source that goes very much beyond business and gives back to the profession that it serves. So we have digital screens at more than 130 locations, and they enable architects and other built environment professionals to enjoy a huge range of content that inspires, that informs and connects them. And as you know, as I said before, BEC is a very proud supporting partner of the Institute of Architects. And Andrew joins me now. How are you, Andrew, today?
Good, thanks, Michael. That was a thorough introduction.
Pleasure. Good to have you with us. And of course, to your side, there is Michael Smith as well of BEC, and we'll talk a little bit about Michael later on. But I suppose my first question to you, Andrew, is this, and that is really, we've had obviously over the last few weeks a fantastic promotion in partnership with the Institute. Your commitment of up to $450,000 commitment to an architect support fund to ensure that the architecture profession recovers after COVID is done and dusted, hopefully sooner rather than later. And obviously we've had a lot of people come to us at the Institute and say, who is BEC and what's it all about? So I think now is probably a better time than ever to really demystify who BEC is and what you do. It's a unique value proposition that we've not really seen before, and I suppose what better time to demystify it. So Andrew, tell us a little bit more about BEC and what you do and what you offer.
Great, thank you, Michael. Well, it's pretty simple. We're an innovative free streaming service specifically for architects. We're all about what architects do and the profession. What we do is we install professional grade, state-of-the-art screens in practices nationally. We currently, as Michael said, have 130 practices around the country with our service as members, and we're growing quickly thanks to the Institute's support. Very importantly, our stream is audio free.
From the Institute's perspective, I know that, when we're promoting our conferences or our events or our awards, which are taking place, as we know, each Friday for the next few weeks, we really value being able to get those messages out so quickly to architects via the TV screens in those practices. I presume, tell us a little bit more about your content, Andrew. You're sitting between a screen. I imagine that that's one of your screens there, correct?
That is right. This is an example of one of the many screens that we install in practices. But importantly, what we do is we work with each individual practice to create the right solution for their environment. And what we do, as Michael's alluded to, is we curate gorgeous architecture projects, both from Australia and around the globe, and we intersperse it with important industry news. And very importantly, a lot of the content is the practice's own projects and their own contents, which we'll talk about a little bit more. but our content is all about being a constant source of inspiration for architects during their day.
Okay.
We also know, I'm an architect, by the way. I'm the consulting architect for the Built Environment Channel, and as I'm sure a lot of people can relate, we get bombarded with emails every day from product suppliers and just about every media outlet in the country just wants to spam your email box. So this is a great way to cut through that clutter and get the messaging that and the information that we need and the knowledge that we need in order to do our jobs. It's also got, we have partnered with a whole series of industry bodies. Obviously, the Institute is a very important source of that information, but we've also got updates from the ACA, Parla, the Landscape Institute, and UDIA, and many other groups. So it's collated all into one source, so that we don't have to, you don't have to go to 30 different websites to make sure that you're not missing any of the key information.
You mentioned practices, they get to upload their own content. I mean, this is some kind of visual intranet. Is that sort of the vibe?
Interesting analogy. We're often told by our participating members that we complement their own intranet. The difference with Built Environment Channel is everyone gets the same message at the same time. They don't have to go and source it, find it, go anywhere. And importantly, we can prompt people to go to individual practices' intranet accounts when something is critical. But 30% of our content is dedicated to the local practice.
What we haven't really touched on yet, Andrew and Michael, is that all of this is totally free for practices, totally free. Yet, we can be suspicious, and I hear people say it's too good to be true. There's no such thing as a free lunch. I mean, there must be a catch. Is there a catch?
No catch. I've heard that so many times over the last couple of years. There is no catch whatsoever, and yes, we are entirely free. Installing the screens is free. It's designed that way intentionally. We supply it, install it, and our ongoing service is absolutely free. There is no subscription cost.
You've got a really good team, and I work closely, obviously, with a number of your support staff. I mean, you've got this great team, but how does it work for you as a business, I suppose? I mean, if everything's free, how are you making money?
Yeah, fair question. So 80% of our content is visually driven, inspiring editorial content that architects want to see, trends and what's happening around the world. But yes, a very limited percentage of our content is product ads. That is what funds the Built Environment Channel. But we make sure through our advisory panel that every product ad is relevant for the industry and the profession. And it's the product content in that advertising that allows us to support the industry and make and our Build Forward pledge and make the service free.
I suppose a huge part of the recent promotion and why it's been so successful has really come down to the Build Forward pledge, that pledge that BEC have pulled together over recent weeks. And I suppose this is now a question for Michael Smith. I mean, you're the chair of the advisory panel that looks after this, and as an architect and also working at BEC, tell us more a little bit about the Build Forward pledge and how it benefits the architectural profession overall.
Sure. So the Build Forward pledge is, I think, really a game changer for our profession. It's been part of Built Environment Channel from day one. We've designed it that way. It's embedded. It's part of the whole idea of what BEC is. So that Build Forward pledge is steered by an industry advisory panel, which I'm chairing, and it is basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at positive impacts that we can make and things that need to be funded, whether that's advocacy programs or Indigenous outreach or gender equity or diversity, maybe it's research, all of these things that really can lift up our profession. So often these programs need funding, and this is a game changer where Built Environment Channel is committed to 10% of its revenue going into this fund. And then on top of that 10%, as part of this current promotion with the Institute, every new screen that is put in, $1,000 goes straight into that program. So what we need is for as many architects as possible to sign up to support this, so that the funds are there to really give back to our profession.
Okay, so to sum up, you're an entirely free service. You actively support the profession, and I suppose there's never really been a better time to join. So, what's the website? How do I join?
Thank you. The website simply is builtenvironmentchannel.com.au. You can reach out either via the Institute or directly for us through our website, and there is a inquiry form there.
Okay.
Be delighted to talk to you.
Okay, great stuff. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Michael. So, BEC have very kindly provided us with Robert Goodliffe today, and it's fantastic to have him with us. I will say it is time for Robert to join us. He is, as of course, the director of Clarke Hopkins Clarke, a member practice of the Built Environment Channel. And I can't really pronounce the name continually. It's quite a tongue twister to say Clarke Hopkins Clarke constantly. So CHC, one of the largest, if not the largest practice globally that is B Corp certified. And it's great to have Robert with us. And I'll hand over to you now, Robert. Talk a little bit about how the B Corp certification has positively affected your business.
Thank you, Michael, and thanks for the introduction. Please forgive me for reading a script. I tend to waffle on this subject a little, so I've written a few words down to be able to stay aligned with the slides. But firstly, may I begin by acknowledging the Boonwurrung and the Woiwurrung peoples of the Kulin Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm sitting. And I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extend this respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait people from other communities who may be joining us today. And thank you once again to the Institute for putting on this series, and for the Built Environment Channel, who we partner with, the opportunity to present our experience on the topic of business for social good. And look, I don't want to come across as too preachy, because I recognise that all architects are generous people, and we freely give our time to our relatives. We've all done our mum's bathroom renovation, or our friend Nico's carport, or our community footy club change rooms, or the childcare kitchen reno. So it's something that we are prevailed upon to do constantly as architects. We all volunteer our experience as members of the Institute of Architects, or to the ACA, or to other worthy bodies. So traditionally, this experience and the membership of boards and organisations that we volunteer with has been a means to gain knowledge and to build professional relationships that are fundamental to both your professional and to the development of your business. We all do it. It's something that we're taught at uni to do. But in our practice, we've sought to go beyond these norms and to develop a formal partnership with people and firms and organisations of mutual benefit, as we believe that doing good is good for business. Next slide, please. So this talk that I'm giving today is structured around a very familiar diagram to many people by Simon Sinek, the famed author of Start With Why. These circles within circles have become recognised as a way to focus actions, behaviours, decision-making and even leadership style with the right emphasis. Next. So the most important and the fundamental place to start with purpose, and where we started with was with our why. Next. So personally, my why has evolved over nearly 62 and a bit years, but more recently in years through continued learning, through collaboration and with experience. And it's particularly why is important to me as this end of my career, I turn towards legacy. International travel has provided experiences of diverse cultures and communities, like it does for all architects. We're inveterate travellers. They provide perspectives on daily life and on business, because business is life for most people. So recent experiences of Kakadu and Uluru have provided insights into Indigenous heritage and culture that was deliberately omitted from my baby boomer education in the 1960s. with its focus on colonial explorers, and I think that's a topic that's very relevant today. A pilgrimage to Bhutan with Small Giants, the impact investment organisation, to explore gross national happiness instead of gross national product is a way of defining success as a country. It's also provided metrics on alternative ways to define success in business. Out of this trip, some very early morning walks with David Ritter, who is the CEO of Greenpeace, which, as you can imagine, got very deep very quickly before breakfast, led to a retreat to Kangaroo Valley last year to explore enhancing Greenpeace impact, what the next 3 years for Greenpeace would be, because they're critical for the planet. As decisions on Adani went badly and are continuing to go badly, people are making poor decisions to support them. Decisions on oil and gas drilling are opening up in Victoria, particularly, and they're pending, and the pressure to continually whack-a-mole on inappropriate opportunities to exploit this country are continuing. And the Earth, as we know, has been recently on fire from Amazon to the Arctic, and particularly on the east coast of Australia last year. So volunteering with like-minded organisations in Thailand, with Hands Across the Water, in Kenya through One Heart, based upon shared value and shared experiences. All of these have been enablers for me to really work on the why and how I've been able to probably bring that to our practice. Next. Clarke Hopkins Clarke as a practice was founded in 1960, so our values are probably for decades been unwritten, but like most businesses, it's necessary to develop statements to define our values, to explain them to a growing cohort of people within our practice and within our client base. But in the case of Clarke Hopkins Clarke, it's important that they're authentic and that they reflect what our practice feels like rather than aspires to be. So we always ask why speaks of inquiry and engagement. We are custodians of a legacy, speaks of our heritage and our direction. Our diversity is our strength, speaks of our people and our diversity of projects. And we seek partnership, speaks of structure and collaboration, how we go about our projects. Though we found they're meaningful and they resonate with us, they're not really front of mind for us, though. They don't truly capture our why as an organisation. Next. So social responsibility is important to our practice, and we feel that doing good is just good business. And this attitude has helped us to develop relationships with some truly inspirational partners and clients who are doing great things. And it's also helped us to build a really positive culture and attract team members who share our values. Our why is summarised as impact tomorrow. And this talks of tangible outcomes, positive action and a focus on the future. It reflects our desire as a practice to improve communities through architecture, interior design and urban design. It's about tomorrow and it's about what impact we can make on making tomorrow better. Next. I mentioned that our practice began in 1960 when 3 young architecture graduates from RMIT, Les Clarke, David Hopkins and Jack Clarke, recognised in architecture a way to connect people and improve lives. Our founders were visionaries and incredible mentors. They were optimistic, energetic, humble people, importantly humble people who quietly changed the way we design communities. Les Clarke exemplified Impact Tomorrow when he founded Eltham College in 1973, and the school is our longest continuous client. Les has been a great mentor to us all, as is the legacy of Eltham College. It was founded in Eltham, which is, I suppose most people would consider it an artist colony in the outer suburbs of Melbourne. But Eltham College was one of the first schools to invite the community onto the campus and to create facilities that could be shared by the community, not just the students. It's the first living memory of a multiple bin recycling system in the 80s. And so it was also one of the truly co-educational schools where the females and the male students both held equal weight. And it would be inspiring to see the boys line up to cheer the netball team and not just the girls cheering on the boys' footy team. So that's been inspiration to us, as we've probably education from that day has continued to be one of our leading sectors that we concentrate in. So Jack Clarke interviewed me straight out of uni in 1982, and I was employed with a strong interest in community architecture because I was taught by Jan Gell in year one, my first year, in the first of his very many impacts on Melbourne, to look at community and to people in community as being really the generator for activity and for purpose. So urban design in our practice continues to be inspired by the philosophies of Gell architecture. Interesting, our founders always sought to be at the leading edge of technology, and at the bottom picture there's a photo of Les demonstrating to his partners how to use the latest three-sided scale, which was the forefront of technology in those days. Next slide. Our work today builds on that proud legacy of community creation, and we've retained a partnership structure. We're not a company, we're a partnership. And this defines us in our philosophy. We've grown steadily since the Keating recession in 1991, the year that I became a partner, terrific timing as it was. And we're now a vibrant community of about 140 main offices in Melbourne. We've got a small startup office in Sydney. This number, I guess many people will recognise, is really challenging. It's exciting and it's scary in equal measure. And though we're large in number, I often voice that we're not a typical large practice. We feel more like a medium practice that's grown sideways. Certainly in complexity, that's the case. This sustained growth has, of course, placed the small practice culture that we were founded with under pressure, and it's required the evolution of our purpose through a focus on our why. And as I say, that focus is important. So we act on our why as architects by first considering people, then spaces, then places in our project work. That's how we go about acting on our why. Next. Our work spans health, education, seniors living and care, mixed use, multi-residential, commercial, community, interiors and urban design. So there's barely a sector that we don't dabble in. And that's particularly in these days of COVID-19, has proved to be a resilient business model. We look for opportunities to enhance community with each type of project: schools, hospitals, aged care, etc., and aim to bring cross-sector experience to bear wherever possible. Quite often we'll look at aged care, for instance, as a residential rather than a health solution. We look to use our residential and retail focus in our health projects to try and deinstitutionalise them for the user groups. We aim for as much complexity and diversity in our projects as possible, as we believe that this reflects the human condition. And in the case of retail projects, what were once shopping centres for us have now become town centres as we aim to create dense, walkable urban communities. Next. Several years ago, we sought to more clearly define our aim, and creating vibrant communities then evolved as our mission. And this term sat around, it was, I guess, one of those things that you come up with at a mid-year forum when you talk about what's going to happen next year. And the term creating vibrant communities sort of sat around for a couple of years until Dean Landy, one of our partners, was given the opportunity to write a business book. And I guess you know the type, that made out of butcher paper, one idea, 163 pages with plenty of gaps and a few funky diagrams. But being an architect, Dean was determined to give depth to the meaning. And the book became a full colour mixture of personal journey, which is always the most interesting part, a research piece involving interviewing 50 thought leaders in community creation, and a community creation handbook. It was published the year before last, and that's Dean signing one of many copies. Clarke Hopkins Clarke benefits from our belief in open IP, and this book is the most tangible example. It pretty much lays out for anyone who cares to read it how we go about creating vibrant communities. We also value collaboration, and Wayne Stevens, another partner, is the past chair of Learning Environments Australia, an organisation to bring educationalists and architects together to create learning environments. And we also value research, and Clarke Hopkins Clarke are currently sponsoring and participating in the University of Melbourne study into schools as community hubs. We gain knowledge through research, seated forums where we're not the smartest people in the room, and connections with like-minded people and organisations. This book has pleasingly found its way onto the coffee shop of our policymakers, and it's also been recently spotted in an airport bookstore, so it's gaining some traction. It's in its second reprint, and it's available online through creatingvibrantcommunities.org. And being in its second reprint, it's officially in Australia, nudging the bestseller lists. That's pretty much all it takes to be a bestseller in Australia. Next. Clarke Hopkins Clarke are proud sponsors of One Heart Foundation, which was founded in 2007 by Dean Landy. Yep, the guy I mentioned in the last slide. He's found the secret of the 36-hour day, and he's an inspiration to us all. One Heart builds children's villages to provide education, healthcare, accommodation, and most importantly, love to orphaned and abandoned children in Kenya and Uganda. The number of kids living on the streets in Kenya exceeds that. The population of Western Australia, for instance. It's an enormous task. The children's villages are socially, environmentally and financially sustainable. They don't rely on a handout, they're a hand up. Hundreds of children from a local community are educated in the primary and secondary schools on site, along with the local One Heart kids. And last year, Clarke Hopkins Clarke purchased a school bus to safely transport local children to and from the schools each day. And school buses in Kenya are a glorious yellow colour. Not very architectural, but they really stand out. Cropping, aquaculture, dairy, poultry and bakery employ local community members, and the foundation also supports children living with their family in the community outside of the children's villages. Each year, CHC provides the opportunity for our staff members to attend the Run from Poverty experience in Kenya through additional leave and payment of airfares and ground costs. And as a community, we work together to assist each participant raise the required $10,000 contribution, usually significantly exceeding this sum through the contribution of the whole team. So we benefit from our strategic CSR partnership with One Heart, as participants will receive leadership training as well as the unique life experience. And they come back with great sort of personal growth. And the practice community is strengthened through the activities in support of the team members participating in this run. Interestingly, the run this year had to be called off because of COVID-19, but the community has pitched in and contributed to a GoFundMe campaign to contribute in excess of what the run normally contributes to the One Heart funding. To support the kids and the staff on the ground in Kenya. Next year, this time next year, the Run from Poverty will be on again, and they are looking for participants. Go to oneheart.foundation and Google through and see what they do and see if you'd like to participate. The more the merrier. Next slide. We're also one of 12 architects that are partners with Architects Without Frontiers to support the network, and contributing to enable AWF to continue delivering humanitarian projects in a sustainable way. So we're soon to commence working pro bono for Maasai Girls Rescue Centre in Tanzania on the concept design for an accommodation, education and training centre for at-risk girls in East Africa. Interestingly, it really aligns with the work that Dean and the team have done on One Heart Villages. It's a very similar concept. Clarke Hopkins Clarke benefits from our involvement with AWF through the Association of Like-Minded Practices, fellow support network practices, the knowledge gained through working on culturally diverse projects, and the strengthening of purpose within our team. Next, please. We've also been active members of the Design Futures Council, which was founded in 1994 in the US by, amongst others, Dr. Jonas Salk, who invented the polio vaccine and did the Kahn Institute, as well as the then president of the Institute of Architects in America. And it was formed in Australia recently to focus on architecture's technical and social agenda. And the DFC has evolved internationally to explore the many ways in which design could improve society and the lives of people, as well as ways in which design organisations can thrive in a changing business, societal and environmental landscape. And we benefit from our membership of the DFC Advisory Board through collaboration with our peers in practice and the exploration of the future of design, the evolution of the design marketplace, issues of competitiveness, and the business of design. Next slide. I guess you can see as a background when it was suggested that we explored becoming a B Corp to us, that it became a no-brainer. We achieved our B Corp certification 4 years ago, and we feel as though we've found our tribe. B Corp certification is for business like fair trade certifications for coffee. And global business such as Patagonia and Ben & Jerry's ice cream in the States are at the vanguard. The rigorous certification process over many months required us to evaluate all aspects of our practice and to transparently document our commitments and actions relating to our practice community, our staff, larger society, and to the environment. Last year, 181 of the 193 members of the US Business Council signed a new statement of its principles of corporate governance. They stated that the principles espoused by Milton Friedman in the 60s, that the company's job is to make money for the shareholders, no longer accurately describes the way companies should strive to create value. The new statement that they've adopted adopts the B Corp principle that the interests of customers, employees, suppliers and communities, as well as shareholders, are inseparable, pointing to such issues as diversity, social inclusion and the environment. And this statement was signed by the likes of Amazon, IBM, Walmart, Boeing and Coca-Cola, which bodes well, you'd expect. But the fact that it was also signed by Lachlan Murdoch for News Corp means that we'll need to wait and see how the rubber hits the road. Next slide. Of the 3,000 or so B Corps worldwide, Melbourne has fostered the greatest concentration of B Corps related to population since Small Giants, who stepped in to help develop the Commons, the Breathe Architecture project, at the height of the last GFC, the last significant economic downturn. And they also brought B Lab to Australia and New Zealand. They were the founding B Corp. We partner with fellow B Corps locally on professional services level, and we drink Sprout coffee from our Keep cups, and we utilise Who Gives a Crap toilet paper and other hand towel products and so forth. We've installed e-water system to eliminate the use of chemicals harmful to our environment in our office. We've conducted our own water and waste analysis, leading to a significant improvement in our recycling processes. And we've recently, as a result of that, purchased a dehydrator to create compost from food waste in an office environment. We've recently just completed our recertification, and we've managed to amplify our impact from 94 points up to 117 points. The benchmark for becoming a B Corp certification is attain 90 points. We've looked for significant improvements to amplify our impact and improve our score. But we've importantly used the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal as a roadmap for our next steps. And one example of these further measures has been addressing our greenhouse gas footprint. Our practice has been independently assessed as carbon neutral since 2018. We've used a fellow B Corp, Pangolin Associates, to independently certify our footprint. And interestingly, on their assessment, the choices that we've made around our own office development and the choices that we make in running our practice means that benchmarked against a professional services firm of our size, we're at about 35% of what the global greenhouse gas footprint would be. Those mitigation methods mean that we can then, within a reasonable budget, offset our remaining greenhouse in ways that do support the global development goals, as well as reducing our carbon footprint. So we've been able to target gold standard offsets, such as supporting Indigenous land care through land burning clearing methods in Cape York, We've been able to support the purchase and sequestering of old growth forests in Tasmania from any future logging, and also support the reforestation of Timor-Leste by local communities. Timor-Leste, people may be aware, is the most impoverished country in our locally to Australia. So we benefit from being part of the B Corp community, as B Corp principles provide a point of reference for decision making on our actions, activities, projects, our collaborations, our clients, which projects we take on, which clients we choose to work with, and which clients choose to work with us. It's very common in our practice to hear judgments for us, such as, that's not very B Corpy, or they're not very B Corpy. It's become almost a catchphrase in our practice. Next. So commencing with why and exploring how we take actions to impact tomorrow means that what we do, our architecture, our interiors and our urban design can thrive. Next. We can engage in conversations with clients that have similar values leading to projects with shared benefits for all stakeholders. One example in this slide is recently constructed the Little Miller and Nightingale apartments in Brunswick in Melbourne. And that's a 50-50 mix of a Nightingale project and a standard investor or owner-occupier apartment model, sharing similar and social and environmental aspirations. And that benefit of this project was the opportunity to collaborate with Breathe Architecture, who did the interior design. Next slide. We're also offered the opportunity to work on some pro bono work that matters and has a lasting impact. And this often involves pro bono work on projects to get them shovel ready for investment or funding. And one example of this on the slide is a proposal for the new Greenpeace headquarters, the Asia Pacific in Sydney, where we collaborated with a group of angel investors who will provide peppercorn rental to support an organisation that we all believe in. It's a training and an office for Greenpeace for the Asia Pacific. It includes a climbing wall for obvious purposes, as well as being really high-end ESD principles, and to support Greenpeace in their active work throughout the Asia Pacific region. Next slide. Next slide, please. We're given opportunities to leverage our experience and relationships to impact communities. And one example of this on the slide on my left is an MOU that we've signed with Uasin Gishu County Government in Kenya, who are inspired to transform the provincial capital Eldoret, leading to ASEAN Smart City status. Like many countries, Kenya is rapidly urbanising. So they've got to transform what were regional communities into sustainable, societal and socially and environmentally sustainable large cities. So we're inspired to assist in creating a city that will not only improve the quality of people's lives, as I said, a large proportion of the population transitions from rural to urban lifestyles by 2030, but will also create the environment to see generational transformation by unlocking and enabling the entrepreneurial spirit that lives within each Kenyan. On the right, we've also been given the opportunity to design and deliver a culturally appropriate hospital, full-service hospital in Lae, in the supporting the highlands of Papua New Guinea, currently nearing the end of construction. Next slide. Next slide, please. So we're given the opportunity to shift our perspective in our projects to communities, moving on from projects to the development of communities, where we can truly impact tomorrow on a larger scale. One example of this is Clara, the previous slide on this one, where the perspective is on nation building. And we are the consortium design leaders on this visionary project, which uses privately funded value creation model to capture the uptake in land value, to develop 8 cities of 4,000 people, which is the population of Canberra, in the corridor between Melbourne and Sydney, connected by an elevated, very fast train. This transport option is sorely needed as the Melbourne-Sydney Air Corridor is one of the most heavily travelled globally, and this proposal in prospect delivers an express service of 2.5 hours door to door. Current population forecasts require a city the size of Canberra to be built each year for the next 30 years. And the current solution is to let Melbourne and Sydney expand exponentially. This once-in-a-100-year opportunity to envisage a new city model based upon walkable urbanism, car-free, with autonomous public transport systems and with closed-loop water, power and waste. The business model, which is currently with the Minister for Population, Cities and Urban Infrastructure, requires us to master plan the city, design the key infrastructure and envisage the public realm. Of course, with Jan Gell in mind, we first considered people, then spaces, then places. The vision, funding, technology and employment generation is in place. We are hopeful that there is enabling support at government level to enable the largest nation building project in our history to proceed. When everyone talks in the media about the need for fast transport, keep this in mind. It's sitting there on someone's desk. Next. So the legacy of this holistic approach is that it provides a resilient business model and a challenging and engaging future. A clear focus on why supports a strong culture based on caring for community and each other. Finally, a takeaway from our time in Bhutan where we were advised to think less and feel more is to know your direction, then you have no competition. Others are on a parallel path to their own future. I'll leave you with the next slide with a quote from Hugh Mackay, who wrote the foreword to Creating Vibrant Communities. Come in. That's the beautiful symmetry of human society. We need communities and they need us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert. That's a great presentation. I have a lot of questions for you, and I'm sorry. My first question, I suppose, to you is this. Your philanthropic approach is so incredibly wide-ranging. How much time at CHC do you commit to all of this? I mean, where's the architecture getting done? You're in Kenya 1 minute, and then you're working on a philanthropic project over here. How much time across the organisation is it a mandated requirement under a B Corp Act to commit a certain number of hours each week or month or year to continuing your philanthropic approaches?
No, there's no requirement under B Corp to do anything really. The points are available in the B Corp impact assessment for you to take them up. You can't lose points, you can only gain points. I guess if you're going to say that you impact tomorrow as your why, then you've got to find as many ways that you can impact as possible. My role has evolved towards the future and towards impact and away from architecture. I guess at 160 people, it is a complex and problematic practice that we run. But we think that it's a resilient business model because it doesn't, it enables conversations with like-minded and visionary people, the people that we want to work with. If you had given a choice, and touch wood, I'm touching wood, the choice will always be available to us, but it enables conversations around purpose and not around maximum yield and minimum fee. So when there's a downturn, people will decide with people to work with people that they believe in and not people that they have to pay.
You've actually answered the next question I wanted to talk about, and that was about attraction, about attracting people into the organisation with a like mind that sort of marries up to your culture and your team ethos, I suppose. And we know from every form of research that millennials especially are actively drawn to organisations that have a very strong social commitment. Do you see CHC getting a lot of interest from graduates and younger generations of people because they reflect their values and they can see it at Clarke Hopkins Clarke?
I think it's a pretty strong attractor, certainly. I think that's one of the B Corp tenets that people will want to work with B Corps because the world is moving away from where it was. And on the other side of COVID-19, when we return to normal, we really hope it's not going to be a return to the old normal, but there's going to be a new normal. As you know, around the world, there's no trust left in government. People are electing, making strange election choices out of desperation more than knowledge. And we all know that the non-government sector, the tasks expected of them are beyond what they can handle. And so business really is the biggest influencer in society. The amount of people that are employed and the wealth and the generated in business means that if you can transition a small proportion of business towards looking beyond shareholder primacy or just the profit that you make for the owners, then you can really impact society in multiples of what a business can do with just in business as usual.
In our role here at the Institute, I speak to a lot of architects, and I hear a lot about different cultures in different places. You know, from one firm it may differ vastly to the next. Tell us a little bit, since your B Corp commitment, since your philanthropic endeavours both in Australia and internationally, tell me a little bit about the culture at CHC. What's it like to work there?
Well, it's strange at the moment because everyone's at home, really. And so that really does put, as you can imagine, I think everyone's probably experiencing, puts the culture under a lot of pressure. And I guess being buttressed by a belief, a really deep-seated knowledge of why you choose to work here, really does hold you in good stead when you're going through these particularly strange times. We use Slack as our enterprise social media, and look, there's multiples of more Slacks in the private relationship channels than there are in the public channels that we can all see. And look, I choose to think that's a good thing. People have relationships between each other that extends beyond work, that it feels as though it's a really strong and supportive team. And I guess a lot of those conversations that don't need to be seen by everyone are important to the people that are holding them.
On your website, it says, doing good is good business. I mean, that's a direct quote from your website. Do you think that the business that you win can be attributed somewhat to your culture as a B Corp? Are you getting more work from clients as a recognition of the B Corp certification?
There's certainly a proportion of it, but being a B Corp doesn't cover up the fact that you've got to be good at what you do. You've got to actually deliver value. People will only employ people if they practices or buy products if they deliver value, and you've got to demonstrate value. But I think if you put the offer of a deeper conversation out to the universe, then the universe does pay back a commitment. It is it's very much a karma thing, I think. That's what I choose to believe in. But look, there is a lot of stuff to do, and we're only probably addressing, as busy as this looks, we're probably only addressing a fraction of the stuff that you could be doing if you were truly expansionary in looking up from the screen and to what the issues pertaining to society are.
In an environment, I suppose, at the moment where the bottom line really counts. I mean, we've had work disappear from a lot of our members' tables. We are struggling in some respects. I mean, in terms of your commitment, and this is a question from Matilda on the chat, it's a great question. She says, has your commitment to being socially responsible, being environmentally aware, affected your profit margins?
I don't think so. I think we didn't need to change anything really fundamentally to become B Corp certified. We got our certification well above the benchmark by just behaving the way that we had been behaving. So it's pretty much endemic to our organisation. But the stats from the GFC in the States, from B Lab Global, were that B Corp companies were 67% more likely to survive during the GFC than non-B Corps. So that goes to the power of relationships when times get tough. So we look, don't get me wrong, we are really focused on profit, because if you're not generating cash, then you have no choices. When the cash runs out and you start focusing on the dollar and not on the impact, then it's really stultifying in terms of the growth and the mindset.
You talked, this is my second to last question, but you talked about creating vibrant communities in the session. You talked about that a lot. You talked about tribes. You talked about, this development of community vibe in terms of making communities really thrive and flourish. Now, I mean, social distancing is the new norm for as long as we are aware of. I mean, how do architects, this is maybe more of a technical question, how do architects create spaces, create tribes, create communities that bring people together, yet still keep, you know, an appropriate square meterage in terms of distance?
Well, I'd like to think that we are going to get back to some sort of social norms, that we are going to find our way through this, because otherwise, you know, the whole theory of CBDs and universities and apartment buildings and schools, etc., is under threat, because they do. Human beings created work as a social enterprise, effectively. We choose to live in communities and we value community. So that's why everyone is feeling really stressed, and it's finding, you know, the vulnerable, the people that were, I guess, susceptible, finding this stress is almost becoming unbearable. So I really hope that we find a way through this by some techniques and the health professionals sort of solve it some way or another. But I think that resilience and social support is really important, and I think we're all grappling with whether we need more office space or less office space. But certain things are going to change, but I think that important considerations continue: social support, environmental support, and behaving respectfully to each other in a community. I think that's what's held Australia in good stead, that we have actually taken this on board, and we have supported each other as a community and maintained the social distancing and made a lot of clever choices as a community. You know, we have listened and we have behaved responsibly.
My final question to you, Robert. You talked a lot about resilience. You talked a lot about having a resilient business model. To those that are watching online, for those that will watch this recording afterwards on YouTube, I mean, what's your final piece of recommended advice and guidance to ensuring that architects can thrive, both now in COVID-19 and into the future? What's your final piece of guidance and recommendation to us on that point?
Sure. I've been a partner for 40 years. When I became a partner, we were 7 people, and we're now, 147, say, more or less. And that's been based on concentrating on doing good work, not spinning your wheels, and not focusing on the dollars. That if you do good work and you can demonstrate value through knowledge, then the dollars will come. But don't put the cart before the horse. And that's pretty much what B Corp's about. Find your why, and it may not be B Corp. I hope for a lot of people listening that it is, because this is a tribe, but it's not a club. This is a movement that is really important, not just in architecture, but in business, to change away from business as usual to business for impact.
Okay, we will leave it there. Robert Goodliffe from Clarke Hopkins Clarke. Great to have you with us, and we're really pleased that you've been able to spend this time with us and go through your presentation about B Corp. It's certainly very impressive, incredibly inspiring. So thank you very much for your time. We really do appreciate it. It's been great to spend this time with you. And of course, a huge thank you to Built Environment Channel as well for supporting the Institute as well, and being a national supporting partner, and also negotiating with Robert to get him in front of us today. This interesting conversation about resilience leads into next week's Lean In series. That's all around pipeline of work, and this is all about winning more business. I've had a huge amount of people come to me and say, Michael, I'm really struggling. COVID-19 has seen a downturn in the amount of pipeline projects that I've got going on. So next week, we're talking about how to create a really strong pipeline of work, and that's using practical marketing and business development methods that really work. And joining me from Queensland next week is going to be Lindy Johnson. Lindy Johnson is very well known as the director of LJC, Lindy Johnson Creative, and that's a firm that provides marketing and business development, publicity and media services to leading architecture and design firms in Australia and also throughout the UK. She's been at this job for about 30 years. She's been working with senior levels of government and industry, creating national and global demand for architects, for designers, for artists. And so Lindy will be joining me next Tuesday, and she'll be discussing the do's and don'ts of marketing and helping you to implement really a very strong and practical business development idea to connect more with clients and build a really strong pipeline of work. So if you're keen to find out how you can really boost your future pipeline of project work as an architect, then join me next Tuesday. That's it for today. As always, I've been Michael Linke here at the Institute of Architects in my front bedroom. But thanks so much for joining us today. I really look forward to seeing you again at our next Lean In on Tuesday. Stay safe, and I'll see you again next